hot. Now Texas is just a smoldering place in the middle of the summer. Okay? Talked to my daughter, she lives south in Nashville, Tennessee. She said, Dad, it was 80 degrees here today. She said, there's nothing right about this in November. And I'm thinking, it was 77 at my house earlier this week. And the guys are finishing up harvest. And I'm thinking, this is not right. We haven't, it's like, there were 3 days we actually broke out something you'd call a sweater or a vest. It's not been cold. So we got warmer days. Well, you know what that means? Declining number of extreme cold days. So we talk to people, we get a snowstorm in the winter and it's like, so I'm up in age. Do you remember the blizzard of 1978? We talk about it, the snow was so high. It was my senior year of high school, okay? We lived out in the prairie. We dug out every day for weeks and weeks. And we forget, but it was seminal because it was my senior year. My brother got married in December. We had a big, huge snowstorm in December. The big one came in January. Didn't go away. We got to scoop snow every day. We got another one blast in February. We got the last blast in March. Here's the beginning of March, and I'm calling Dad, going, I can't get home 3 miles from school. I'm going to have to stay at somebody else's house. I can't get there. Roads were blocked. That was that year. I missed 45 days of school. We didn't make them up. Don't hold that against me, okay? But we don't have that day. We don't have days like that. We don't have periods like that. We might get a cold winter, but it's not long-term, this climate thing, okay? You've got expanding frost-free seasons. If you got higher temperatures and not as much cold, you're going to have less frost-free days or more frost-free days. What's that mean? I can tell you what it means. It means today they're planting corn in North Dakota and Manitoba. And as a kid, they didn't do that. They couldn't do it. They couldn't raise it. And now we can, because it's warming, okay? And we can get out, and farmers here are getting out earlier to plant because the ground's warming up sooner, because it's not as cold over the winter. Does that create other problems? Yes, because in some of the weeds that we'd like to be suppressed don't get suppressed as well. So there's all kinds of trade-offs here. This is an interesting one, I think really touches the water as well. Increasing precipitation, bigger events. So we get 5.5 inches of more of rain than we did in 1895, okay? It's not just since 1895, it's not like since that 1 year. No, the trend line is this. But it's not spread out. So we get more heavy rain events in the winter and the spring. So a lot of farmers were surprised this fall. Crops were good, and it was a dry summer. So how do we deal with that? Okay. So if you have more heavy rain events in winter and spring, that's when we have to worry about it. Why did they build a berm out here on Little River? Because they're concerned about the big flood. And what's the invasive species are we concerned about? Do we know? Carp. We were talking about this morning and said, here's an interesting thing. Remember, because we always talk about the kind of the wonderful memory of the Wabash and Erie Canal. If the Wabash and Erie Canal were still here, the carp would already be there. Because they would have a aquatic highway between the Gulf of Mexico and Lake Erie. So maybe there's a reason, all right? But what happens is we have flooding. So in the spring and the winter we have flooding. And we have farm and residential runoff. People don't like it. They want all their water out of their yard. They want all the water off. They put it in the drains, take it away. Farms, you know what farmers do? I got to get out there, so we got to get rid of the water. So they put more tile and more tile and more tile in, and it goes away. And then what do we do in August when we haven't had rain for weeks and weeks and weeks? It's a concern I've got. Because we're not talking about how do we allow the water to percolate down, because it doesn't get away fast enough. The other thing it does, guess what? If you're downstream, you're going to get all your water and all their water. A gentleman who farms down at Ben Sims told me that when central Indiana used to get 4 inches of rain, the rivers, when the Wabash River came up, White River came up. If central Indiana gets 4 inches of rain, we're underwater down here. Because so much has been paved over and we shove everything down the pipe. Just get rid of it. It's not my problem anymore. I just need to get it in the stream and let it go south. Okay? So you got that. These are tough issues. And then communities are dealing with combined sewer overflows because their waste systems are not designed really, really well. We didn't plan on this much development. We didn't plan on this much volume, but we're sitting here. And the last thing is we have hotter, drier summers, and those provide heat stress. What happens with urban places when they have heat stress? What do they like to do? Water the grass, right? And we've had all kinds of places put irrigation in, so I don't even have to worry about it. I don't have to drag a hose anymore. It just turns on a timer. And now, I had that at a house my wife and I used to live in, but it bothered me a lot because I thought, if the guys aren't getting water on the crops, I feel real bad about, let me go out and make sure my yard's green. So I really didn't use it. I still don't. I just kind of like, that's nature, let's deal with this. Okay? This is what's going on. This is what's going on. How's it affect us? Well, wonderful basketball coach grew up in Indiana. Purdue, he was Martinsville High School, went to Purdue. I never liked him when I was a kid, even though he was a Purdue guy, because he was at UCLA and they beat everybody, including us. I later became a huge fan of his, but he has wonderful things, wonderful outlook, but he has this quote: when you start having all the right answers, you'll stop asking all the right questions. Without any political statements, we could all use this a little bit more. We don't ask enough questions. Someone, well, let me tell you how it is. From your perspective, but not everybody's. So how do we have those conversations? And in a world, in a systems world, and clearly water, of anything we do, even more than land, because you can't move land, but we can move water around. In a systems world, collaboration is the key. That's the key to what we have to do. So what is collaboration? So here's my definition. Collaboration is the art of working together in a common direction toward a shared purpose without a predetermined destination. Glad that snaps back on. So this is not the Webster's dictionary definition. This is one that I've created over time. And it's significant because I've done another number of collaborative projects. What it means is, I'm not sure where we're going, but I know I want to go there with you. What are we going to do? Not sure. Why did you get involved 33 years ago and stay involved? Could you tell me that here's where we were going to be in 2023? No. No. But you thought, this is something important to me. I want to be involved. That's what collaboration starts with. That it doesn't start with answers, it starts with questions. And then it says, you got the same question or similar questions? Let's go see what we could do together. Okay? When you have collaboration, I'm going to tell you what the DNA of it is. First is you ask a lot of whys. You don't ask many whats. What are we going to do? Don't start there. Why are we doing it? Why does this matter? We should know the answer to that question. Okay? Second one, maybe needs to be one. I almost thought about changing this morning. It's hard work. People say, oh, we collaborate with people. Really? Because it is brutally hard work. Because it means, as much as I'm concerned about what I believe, I have to be concerned about what you believe. Where do you want to go? How do you see our direction? That all has to be part of the conversation that we tend not to have. It values we over me. Or another way to put it is, everybody who comes in this room today has a reason to be here. You have your goals as to why you arrived. And we need those goals. So coming together with these goals, your personal goals, you bring them together, that unites us. The problem is too many people walk into a room with a personal agenda, not personal goals. And the agenda is, you need to agree with me. Right? And that's a problem. So this, opposite that, values we over me. How do we start? You bring your imagination first. Instead of saying, here's what we should do, you start with, I got an idea. Okay? You got an idea? I got an idea? You got it? Let's talk about it. So we see what we can do. Then you put together teams. I say teams, you know what? because the word committee is so horribly beat up. Committee, oh no. Would you work on it? You know what we now call, I talked to some people yesterday, a couple days ago, we now call them task forces. Why? Because would you serve on that? Here's the time. Yeah, I might do that. We got a work group, work team, anything. Committee, oh no, not a committee. I don't want to do a committee. Committees are bad thing. Bad committees are bad. Good committees are really rewarding, okay? But so it's how we get together. But we got to form teams, because if you don't have a team, then it's just me again, and we're out here for we, not me. Next thing is you got to adapt, not adopt. In all the things we do, somebody will say, let's say we talk about wetlands and any kind of restoration. People say, let me tell you about the best practices. Where? Where are the best practices? Your best practices? They're not the best practices, because they don't have Little River. They don't understand what it does. Most people in Indiana couldn't tell you where it is, frankly. But I'm a map geek. So I was like, ooh, I know where this is. And then you go, the Maumee Torrent. Yeah, what is that? So you have to explain that, that it was the old lake, broke through, all that stuff. But one of the first times I was driving, I had two guys on my state FFA officer team who were from Woodland. And we were driving out, so later we were driving out 14 east. And I was just fascinated that here's the highway, here's the railroad, and then just past the railroad, I mean, that road just really dips and goes down and then flattens out, just flat as a table neck. What is that? And they kind of look at, well, that's that area. Okay, so you really don't know. But I learned that's the bottom of, that's Black Swamp. That's the old lake bed of Lake Maumee. Okay, that is cool. What's the story? And you go, Lake Erie was nothing compared to Lake Maumee in size and scope and all that stuff. And so guess what? Water has a history. Not just our memory, but water has a history. And if we study the water's history, we'll learn a lot about us. How did people get around before we had cars? Water. Why is Fort Wayne where it is? Water. Why was it Kikiyanga, the Indian village? Water. Why was Little River important? Because it was the portage between here and between the Three Rivers and the Wabash. Water. Water has a memory. Okay? So when we think about this, do not let somebody else come and tell you, here's exactly what from somewhere else. Here's exactly what you ought to do. Here's how you ought to do it. Here, these are the best practices. It worked in this wetland we restored in Arkansas. Well, congratulations. We're not in Arkansas. Good practices? Absolutely. Things we can learn? Yes, good. Okay, we learned that. Now how do we take it and not adopt it, but adapt it for where we are? Right? How do we adapt it for where we are? We already talked about boundaries. So collaboration says, if it's about we, not about me, I don't get to say, oh, here's the perspective, here's the boundaries, let me draw 5 squares around it. You do not get to create the box in which we all fit. Because it won't work. You have to coach and coax. You cannot say, you will do this and you will believe me because I said so. No. I can't even make you trust me. And I'll go in here, my goal today is to make these people in this room trust me. I can't do that. I can try to be as trustworthy as possible. Who decides if I'm trusted? You do. Not me. Not me. Somebody comes up in front of you and says, I'm here to be your leader. Like, you got to earn that one. You know who chooses the leader? The followers. Not the managers, but the leaders. The leaders are chosen by the followers because they decide who they will follow. It's all part of this. And the last thing is, it's in the definition, it's a shared journey. Something we have to do together. Okay? All right. There are some obstacles to collaboration. I'll point those out here. Collaboration is always between people, not organizations. So we can talk about Little River Wetland Project. You say, oh, I collaborate with them all the time. Actually, you don't. You collaborate with them. You collaborate with the staff members. You collaborate with the volunteers. You collaborate with the board. You don't collaborate with the organization. It has no life. The people have it. And so you can say, I work with this group, and so I've seen it time and time again. where you have a team of people who work together really well. They collaborate, they have a shared agenda, and one of them may go take another job, may die, may do whatever, and immediately you go, wow, this is just not like it was. You know what? It's never about the organization. It's about the people. That's the key. Second thing, players come and go, right? So it's in constant flux. I talked to a gentleman a few weeks ago. He said, I didn't get you called back because I was at the State House all day on a land use study committee. It's like, yeah. And he started talking, I said, did you know in the late 90s there was an entire white paper, like a 40-page white paper done by all the agricultural groups on agriculture and natural resources and land use? He says, no. I said, did you know there was there was an Indiana land use consortium of 40 organizations, all kinds? No. I said, when did you arrive here? He goes, about 2006. I said, about the time it disbanded. Because we hit the housing crunch in 2008. There wasn't any land use pressure. Guess what? Nobody was building anything. You just stopped. Pressure was off. Guess what? Drive anywhere, the pressure's back on. And instead it was good, we need to do something amazing. It's like, we need to learn what we already knew before. He said, do you know where that is? I said, yeah, I got the report. He said, what was your role? I said, first chairman of that group. So what do we know? How do we know? People come and go. How do we keep people engaged? How do we learn? How do we not have to keep relearning every single time? How do we sit down with people who've been there and go, what was it like when you did that? How do we learn from that? So we can start a little bit farther ahead than we're starting at zero. Okay. Short-term thinkers on a long-term journey. This is challenging. You got people who we got to get something done now. Water is a long-term deal. You know, the water we use today is the same water that Julius Caesar used. Right? It's been up and down a few times. Same water. We're not making new. So there's no manufacturing out. Let's make some new water. We need some more. So with that in mind, we have to figure out, it's a long-term journey, and we can't just think short-term on it. Yeah, there are short-term issues, but it's a long-term deal. Detours are roadblocks. When you collaborate, you're going to hit roadblocks. And what you have to, or obstacles, and what you have to decide is, you ever let me rephrase it this way. You ever drive through the countryside? You can do this in northern Indiana. Let's see. You can drive this in central Indiana where there are not lakes. I've been lost twice in my life, one of them was around lakes up here. But if you drive through the flat portion of Indiana where it's all grid, and I come upon a bridge out, and the state highway wants to send me on a detour, I'm just going around the block. I'm just going to take this country road to the next one, turn around, and go around the bridge. Once I cross the creek, I'm like, I'm good. I'm back on the highway, and I'm not taking their route. They have to send me a certain route. I'm not doing that. Okay. So if you see it as a detour, those are things we get around. If you see about roadblocks, you go, we're done. Let's go back home. Okay. An unwillingness to share or leverage resources. This is great. It goes with this next one. Collaboration can't be forced. You say, man, we really need the city involved in this. The city says we're not interested. You can try and you can beat your head against the wall. You can do it over time. But you can't make somebody get involved in this if they don't want to be. And you can't collaboration, this goes with this one, unwillingness to share because people are doing it. You can't collaborate with somebody who will say, oh, we love to collaborate. I heard this with the state agency, drove me crazy. We collaborate with everybody as long as we're in charge and we control all the money. I said, you know that's control, not collaboration. No, I said, no, that's control. If you can say, by yourself, you can say, we are not doing that. That is no longer collaboration. That's control. So, and they like control. They like control. All of these get in the way of doing effective collaboration. How we play it, how we deal with it is important. Okay, sometimes it's just too wet. We know that. Sometimes it's too dry. Okay? That's going to happen. That's climate. Actually, that's weather. That's weather. Short-term weather. We're going to deal with this, okay? So, going to bring this, and now I got questions for you we're going to talk about. Here it is. So we got two choices. There's probably more choices, but those are the two we're going to deal with today. Here it is. We can figure out, take a collaborative approach to water leadership, which is about conversation, finding common ground. We can focus on the communities, but not the communities alone. We got to think about the entire corridor, so you can't talk about Little River without having Huntington at the table. And they can't do anything about it unless Allen County's at the table, because everything you got here goes there. And when the Wabash gets around, so we need to worry about the Wabash. Are they talking to the people of Little River? Because it feeds in there. It's all part of this, okay? So we have to share responsibility and share investment. And then we have multidimensional sustainability. Well, that sounds nice, doesn't it? Big word. Here's all it is. We're working together to make it sustainable. Now that's one choice. This whole set is one choice. It's a collaborative approach. Here's the other one. Draconian water management. You know what that is? The courts get involved. We're going to let you win, and we're going to let you lose. Oh, I'm good for that as long as I'm on the winning side. Okay? We do things like we say, well, we can't agree, so we need the legislature get involved. Now, I respect elected officials, work with them a lot, very good friends. How many of them are from here? There's very few that have Little River, as an example, in their district, a few. Okay? So the rest of them, they're worried about theirs. I really don't want them to, if we can do this right, we don't need them involved unless we go to them and say, here's how we need you to help us. Don't tell us what to do, help us. Okay? Another one is, we get caught in the blame game. It's your fault. You're the culprit. You quit doing that. You didn't farm this way. If you didn't worry about landfills, if you didn't worry about where you put the gravel pits, if we didn't worry about how we built highways, if all the things. Why are they building houses out there? Concerned about the water table. Where's my water going to come from? What do they do with the aquifer? All of those issues. Blame game. And then guess what? When you have blame game, you polarize around, there will be winners, and there will be a lot of losers. Is that what we want? And the last one is, somebody will come and go, let me tell you about this theoretical model. Whose theoretical model? I've been on those. I've been in congressional hearings in Washington where you'd say, well, we're going to talk about this animal thing, and I had people really highly credentialed animal scientists on this side of the issue, and really highly qualified scientists on this side of the issue. And so you got people who really don't understand the issue going, who are we supposed to believe? And so we're picking winners and losers, and we're not worried about how do we work together. Okay? So here's some questions. We're going to talk about these. What does shared responsibility look like? Now, I've gone through what I think, but I need to know what did you have a different experience than I do. What does shared responsibility look like? Okay? First question. Second, how can people gain a greater understanding of their personal impact, you and I, our personal impact on our environment? How can we do that? Third, how can communities engage in conversations without pointing fingers? And how can we do it across watersheds? Because we know they're not easy. They don't fit into these nice, cute little boxes. How can we share our personal stories about our best and worst? See, we hit it. Best and worst flooded basement water experiences, right? Where do you go after today? Where do we go after today?